those two Mudos might want to go back to the drawing board because now there's double the trouble. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew and today we're doing another figure comparison. Today we're doing a comparison between the HIYA Toys Exquisite Basic Godzilla 2014 versus the NECA Toys Godzilla 2014, its original release. So to pretty much summarize what this video is going to be, usually we would do, like, again, a more in-depth, detailed sculpt and paint articulation, size, accessories, priceability, and packaging. But there's a bit of an exception to this, and that's primarily going to be that I don't think this would be a fair video unless we're bringing in this guy, the reissue NECA 2014 that I bought in a lot last year in the summer. So he's got almost a year old in the collection, so hey, how about that? So basically this thing, I've already done like a comparison between these two a while back, but to basically again summarize between these two, he has the better, I would say, color scheme. Not so much updated sculpt and paint, sculpt, and pretty much about the same as far as articulation is concerned. It's mainly the paint, and I don't even say the plastic quality as well, that's a bit different compared to this one. So that said, we're going to be a bit more mild, and we're actually going to swap him out with this one because he has a bunch of scuffs and everything, and I don't feel like it'd be much of a fair fight and put him against more of a pristine conditioned NECA Goji. So here you go. This is the matchup we're going with. We're still going to include him just for like variety stuff, but primarily it's going to be based on these two. So again, to reiterate the rules: sculpt and paint, articulation, size, accessories, price, availability, and packaging. Hold on, that's supposed to be 7. I don't know why I swapped to this hand after I did this one. Anyway, so also no other figures are going to be included, so that means no Spitfire 2014 for this one because they are making one, and no Spitfire 2014 for this one because it doesn't exist. Apparently NECA actually did present a prototype to Toho, but they shot it down. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for the intro, so let's go ahead and get started. So first things first is sculpt and paint. And I think it needs to be said that, well, again, it's going to be primarily a comparison rather than an actual versus. But again, we're just using the more updated NECA Godzilla to kind of like make it a bit more evened out. So with that said, for the heads on both figures, then the HIYA Godzilla has the more defined sculpted details, whereas NECA is a lot more smoothed out and looks a little less rendered. However, this is comparing a 2014 figure versus, I think, a 2024, 2025 figure. I don't remember exactly when the 2014 HIYA was released. I think earlier this year. I could be wrong. But that said, this one was made more with the more recent technology. This one's obviously like 11 years old at this point, so there is that to take into account. Even if they had the reissue, they would still use the same mold to pump out the same figure from, so there is that. So as far as the actual sculpted details go, already the HIYA does have the advantage having a bit more better detailing, but as for the colorization, they are completely different. The NECA Godzilla has a more blackened base color scheme with blue highlights, as opposed to the HIYA Godzilla having a gray color scheme with more sandy peach colored highlights. The NECA Godzilla also has more solidified crocodilian looking eyes, while the HIYA figure also has more smaller eyes that look a lot more beady by comparison. Although that could just be a bit of a mild overspray. Going to the mouths on both figures, the teeth again are completely different. The NECA Godzilla teeth are slightly bigger than that of the HIYA, but a lot more sporadic and spread out and are colored white, versus the HIYA, where they're a lot smaller, kind of more jointed together and painted kind of like a dual color of, I would say, that almost looks like a caramel type yellow mixed in with a darker type yellow, almost like, I don't want to say mustard, but it looks very mustard-y. So there is that. Also, as for the inside of the mouth, the HIYA kind of has a one-note colorization, and it does have some mild detailing, which I'll show you right there. See if we can focus that in as well. So there's the detailing at the bottom and the detailing at the top, versus the NECA, where it has a bit of detailing at the bottom. You can kind of see like a mold line, and then really good detailing at the top. And of course their tongues are going to be sticking out, but there is something to note with the articulation, which we'll get to in the articulation section. And as for the actual heads, I'm gonna have to say the mouth on the NECA is my personal my personal favorite of the two, as far as like which one's done better, because it features a bit more detailing and sculpt work and actually has a bit more paint variety, versus the HIYA, where it's more one note and basic, exquisite basic, if you will. However, of note is going to be the neck. And the NECA Godzilla actually loses here a bit, because even though technically speaking it does feature a weaker sculpt, the neck paint is a little weird, because they actually have it more toward the right side rather than the left, and it just looks very sloppy and very rushed on NECA's part, versus HIYA, where they actually took their time to sculpt the paint where there is supposed to be paint and actually highlighted the gills, versus here where they did highlight the gills, but again, that tan color really just doesn't do for me, and it doesn't look the greatest. So there is that to point out. Also, like I made mention to bring in the original NECA Godzilla, it actually has a better painted neck, which is almost the way I'd like it, but features pretty much more or less the same paint and sculpt you'd see through the other one, just in a lot worse condition, because I've had this thing for about like 9 years now, so yeah, there is that. Next, let's talk about the sides of the body. And much like I've said about the face, the whole like consistency as far as defined sculpt with more better technology to work with versus more outdated kind of gets a little evened out, because the NECA Godzilla 2014 actually did have a very nice sculpt to it, and though it wasn't necessarily the most defined, there was still a lot of nice texture and detail to be found. And here for the reissue, you have a lot of nice kind of like blue wash over the thick black plastic backing, and it looks very cool and it looks very amphibious, versus this one where it's a lot more kind of like laid back as far as the colorization goes, and it looks a lot more definition. Like I made mention in my original review, I feel like this is like 4K versus that one 720p, if you guys know what that means quality wise. Check the quality of the video, it should be 1080p. Anyway, as far as the actual like mold details go, again, I'm gonna have to say the HIYA does win a little bit here, but as far as the actual paint colorization goes, I'm actually gonna have to say it's a bit evened out here, because NECA's blue is very good, but we do have some blue highlights here, and it does mix well with the wash of like this tan colorization a bit, although it does kind of bleed into the socket a bit. Here, going to the actual front of the body, we can kind of see more or less that these two in a way have a similar problem. While the actual tan color is very different, this one's more lighter, this one's more darker, especially that wash of dark brown, almost looking like a poopy brown. Did you roll in feces, Godzilla? Seems like a very uncharacteristic thing for you to do, unless you're the 98 Godzilla. This one, it seems to have the same problem in that the paint just kind of stops. This one attempts to kind of like bleed it over to the shoulders, but it kind of has like a bit of a double-edged sword, because they didn't bother to paint in like the articulation sockets. Like when you start posing it, it cuts off the paint. And again, like I made mention, more like the darker brown is more to this side than this side, and it just looks a little eh. But for the actual arms, I will say that as far as like the colorizations of the arms themselves go, again, pretty evened out. The claws are definitely going to be the things that are going to be like different here. The HIYA obviously has the bigger arms, but we have a bit more gloss to this one, kind of giving it a bit more like a color advantage, if you will. So there's that to point out. Next, the legs. The HIYA is going to have the bigger legs between the two, and it's going to have a lot more high definition sculpt work, versus this one where it's a lot more dialed back as far as the sheer detail goes, but definitely has quite a bit of nice detailing as far as like the paint itself goes. Primarily here, you basically lose a lot, if not all of it, towards the lower leg, below the knee, and the foot, which is a really big disadvantage when you have this foot or this leg when it's all painted down to the foot. Although they do keep the gloss there and a bit of like colorization there, but it definitely comes from like primarily the inner parts of the leg where you do keep that more kind of like tan color. And then this one where it kind of does the same thing except giving you a little bit more variety. So your mileage will vary from figure to figure, but these are the ones I own. Next up is the spines, and I'm just going to come out and say it, HIYA wins this part. Essentially, the HIYA is what NECA could have done, because these fins are going to be, just brutally honest, even back then were kind of cheap because they are very small. They're made of very kind of like malleable rubber, very soft details, and compared to the rest of the figure, it doesn't look that great versus this one, where it does have the rubberness to it, and it definitely is a lot more pointy than that of the NECA. They're kind of evened out. This has a lot of more detail. Let's actually focus on that again. Look at all that crisp detail. It actually also has dry brushing in it as well. Let's actually pull it in front so you can actually get a better look at that. So yeah, there's a lot more detail to be found with this one. And finally, the tail, which I'm going to come out and say this once again, the HIYA, in my personal opinion, has the better tail. It's a lot more detailed and actually has a bit more paint to it than that of the NECA Godzilla, which despite having a bit of a mild wash underneath the base, it kind of loses a lot of the paint when you really get to like the spoilers bendy wire portion of the tail. So there is that to point out as well. But all of this is at least painted to some degree, especially on the underside where they didn't just cop out and stop. That's really nice on HIYA's part. So, and it also just looks a little nicer, and it's actually a bit longer than that of the NECA Godzilla tail. So just trying to push them back to back. Yeah, there's no way I'm going to be able to get that on camera. So, yeah. So, sculpt and paint. Which one's better? I think it's pretty much safe to say that while I do prefer the NECA in some ways, for example, I would actually say it has the better colorization, and I would say it has the better done mouth. The HIYA just absolutely smacks NECA Godzilla in this round. I'm sorry, but it's clear that because HIYA was able to do more with their Godzilla than NECA was back in 2014, it's again clear that they wound it up with a much better up-to-date product and was able to succeed on that. And I'm really astounded as to how detailed this guy actually is versus the NECA, where yes, it's very detailed in its own right. Yes, it's well painted in its own right. Granted, it's not the best painted, but it could be a bit better. It just feels a lot better as far as the actual look of the figure itself. And also about the original release, again, it was a lot more tame. Mine's actually got a bit of like gunk in it. I'm gonna have to clean this thing, even though I cleaned it like who knows how many times by now. It's a lot more faded as far as like the color scheme is. This is essentially just brightened. But to really kind of run it home, the HIYA definitely takes this. So for articulation, and you might have noticed I switched back to my V1 or the original released NECA Goji because I just want to like showcase that this thing, even though it's very loose, it's at least it enabled the articulation to be fully capable of what it is. No stiffness, or at least as much as I tried to over the years. So you can go like to my Amber's Godzilla Show playlist, look at the hours of fun I had with this thing. Anyway, for the jaw, we can open about this far and shut, so you get a little bit of range there. For the head, you get this much range looking up, that much range looking down, so not a whole lot. You can go side to side like that and swivel as well as tilt quite a bit with the car going in the background. Nice. you can actually do a full 360-degree swivel with this neck, as well as going up and down, shifting a little bit side to side like that, little tilt like that. So using the two joints, you can actually get it to look up, look down, look left, and look right. Kind of showcasing this better. So yeah, he can look up, but I actually would recommend like putting these spines in between the spine gaps like this. And yes, it also works for the high as well, to get him to look a little higher up. Or what you can do is actually take this route. There's actually a little cut right here, which I'm assuming is from the previous seller or the previous owner of this guy, because they got him used. And then you can have him looking a little higher up than normal. You gotta kind of like rear it up, just for like demonstration. See how much higher you can look up now? Pretty impressive, huh? And the best part is there's actually sculpted in gills and such to actually like accommodate for that new articulation. So essentially speaking, you get hinge, ball joint, and it's not like a singular ball joint system within the neck. It's actually two separate ball joints in the head and neck respectively. So kudos to NECA for that. Now, Withered Godzilla here actually uses, ironically enough, that exact ball peg system, which, if you don't know, essentially the HIYA Godzilla 2021, I think, had a particular ball joint system, or at least the one I own, the Spitfire one. You could actually have a big clear rod, and it like sticks into the neck, goes like all the way out, and then plugs into the head, and there's like these three separate pieces. That is the same here. So Withered Godzilla, assembling him back together, he's basically held together by these three free-floating pieces that act like his gills and his neck pieces. So you pretty much attach that in there and attach the headpiece, which thankfully they did make a bit bigger. So my complaint from the 2021 head has been kind of like rectified a bit. So okay, there we go, back in. Anyway, so for the head, you can actually look quite a bit up, shifting the head down, quite a bit down, and go to the left, and to the right. And the one thing you can't really do is swivel, but for the more organic movements, it actually looks pretty well done, and I do like the fact that it looks this seamless. So as far as like the heads are concerned, I think the HIYA has a bit more range with it, but I do like NECA's approach a bit better, just because of like the particular head to neck joints. It's hard for me to explain, but you do get a bit of range on this one, so there's that. Next up, shoulders. You can go up this high with the shoulder with the NECA, go down, swivel all the way around, swivel hinge for the elbow, swivel hinge, gotta emphasize the swivel, and a ball joint here for the wrist. So you can go down, up, twist, shift a little bit in there. So there's no hinge, but there is a singular ball peg, which does act pretty well. So using the three joints, you can actually get a pretty good wide range of poses. So that's pretty cool on NECA's part. Next, the HIYA. The HIYA does a bit similar thing where the shoulder, moving that tripod a bit, there you go. The ball joint does go a full 360 degrees. You do get a bit of a bicep swivel. And the singular hinged elbow straightens out, but you can also bend in a little bit. And there is a ball jointed wrist that actually has a bit more range than that of the NECA. So as far as which wrist is better, which arm is better, I would actually say the HIYA does win a bit because of its superior range. It just needs a bit better elbow bend. NECA has one singular ball jointed ab crunch, so you can go little up and down. You can actually do a full 360 degrees with the waist. I think you can also do that with the 12-inch tall version as well. You can go a little side to side as well. It's mainly the side that works and a little bit rotation. So again, Not so much bending, and trust me, I've tried over the years, there's definitely not a good bend. Versus this one where it's, again, kind of similar. You do get a bit of a better bend with this one. But the rotation's definitely been a bit dialed back. And as well as the twist. So you do get, I would say, it's hard to say more motion, but you do get a better like bend with the hips. So we're actually just gonna go right to the end as far as who actually wins that point. The NECA has better hips. Sorry, better hips. The NECA has very freed up hips, at least on mine. So you can slide in, slide out, do the splits, and again, do full 360 degrees. We have knee joints, which straighten out about that far, bend in about that far, and can also swivel a full 360 degrees. And a ball joint at the foot, which can go a full 360 degrees, as well as pivot a little bit. So really kind of get into this thing. Also, just something to note is that because of the way that this thing is sculpted, you actually do have to like get this thing kind of like lining up if you don't want there to be like any gaps. So you can actually slide it into place and it looks seamless. It kind of hides the gap a bit, so you can actually kind of line it like this. So thanks to the fact that it is placed more towards the back, you do get quite a bit of movement with the legs, I'm surprised by, versus the HIYA, where you do get a 360, although it is a lot more tighter to get around. I mean, to be fair, I've had this figure for like, what, a week? There you go. Bend knee. Swivel at this part of the knee, which together you can actually bend in a lot more than that of the NECA. Straighten out, I would say about like that far. Try to push it in a little bit further. And of course a little movement at the foot. It can rotate, it's just very, very tight on mine. Also, something I forgot to point out is yes, you can also spread out the hips. So as for which one has the better legs, could just be because of mine, but I do think the NECA does have a bit of better range. And lastly, the tail. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 ball joints here for the front section of the tail. And then from here to roughly about, where's the stop? Roughly about here? Yeah, right here is going to be a bendy wire, and then here's just pure rubber. So as far as like the range goes, you do get the ability to kind of like twist and then like actually use those ball pegs, which are actually very effective. Go up some, straighten it down, and then you can use the bendy wire if you want to bend it. I'm not bending that wire because I don't trust it with my life. And the best part is, at least this one is going to be made of a more thicker rubber, so it's going to be a bit more malleable. However, I would still not suggest like bending this thing until the cows come home. And as for the HIYA, it's going to feature a series of ball jointed segments, which allow you to bend it in like that. Let's try going the reverse way. Going in like that. Go like down like that, and then up like this. So as for the tail, well, actually, you know, let's just go right to the scoreboard here. I'm just realizing something I completely forgot to point out is going to be the jaw articulation and the tongue. Yeah, so the tongue can move on the HIYA, and what's important to note about the tongue is that you can actually go down, and then if you want to raise it up again, click in the jaw, and it goes back up. However, you might have noticed that I have a bit of a problem with my jaw. And like I've stated in my review, that's because the hinge actually came a little bit, not broken, but like a little loose. So yeah, that's fault on HIYA's part, but just fix up your QC and we'll be fine. Anyway, so who gets the articulation point? Well, hold on, how to say this? The HIYA definitely features more joints. As far as sheer quantity of them, it could just be because of my NECA Godzilla having a lot more range because of how loosened it's gotten over the years. But I'd say as far as sheer posing goes, I'm gonna have to give it to HIYA. Yeah, the NECA does have a lot of range, but that's probably, again, just because I've had it for so long. It's one of my childhood figures, one of my first, actually the fourth ever figure I've ever got. But the HIYA just has a lot more joints, and from what I really know, it's also just a lot more. It can strike some poses NECA can't. So for that reason, I'm gonna give this point to the HIYA. Next up is going to be the size comparison, and well, I'm just gonna say no one wins this because effectively, again, they're about the same size. The HIYA is a bit more bulky than that of the NECA, and it's a bit longer too. It sounds so wrong, but at the same time, again, when it comes to like the display presence of these two, they're both going to be the same size. Even if you count, again, the reissue for this, it's still going to be about the same height. About head to head to head, shoulder to shoulder to shoulder. And just to show you what I meant by tail length, because the tail is down on the NECA original release. So NECA's is about here. Using my hand as like a guard, trying to like flatten everything down. The HIYA's tail tip is a bit longer. It's very ever so slight. Yeah, I'm really trying to like get it as fair as possible. Yeah, the HIYA is definitely a bit longer. But at that point, it just comes to like, you really gotta look at it in order to really like determine who gets the actual size here. And again, no one really wins that. But what we do have a clear winner is going to be the HIYA in as far as accessories is concerned. Yes. And this isn't me considering the poster variant, the atomic blast variant. This is just this guy standardly because he actually comes with a pair of clenched fists. Let me go get them. Having the HIYA here as well. Again, you do get these pair of nicely clenched fists, which actually I think I have them opposite of each other. So essentially, they're just kind of like meant for punching or grappling things, which he does grapple with the Mutos. Almost looks like, hold on, can I do this? I can actually kind of get them to handshake. Actually, no, he looks like he's doing some sort of like voodoo magic. Or he's like holding something. Maybe he's holding hands with another Godzilla. Anyway. So the hands themselves, again, clenched. I'm not going to be showing them because they are kind of a pain in the tushy. That said, these two come with nothing. The NECA Godzilla 2014 never came with any accessories. Across all of its releases over the years, it never came with a beam effect, which I don't see why you couldn't have just packaged a beam effect with this guy and not say it's the atomic blast variant. Surely Toho would have approved of that. The 24-inch long version, which was the one that made sound, yes, did come with a sound feature, but this guy didn't. This guy came with something, therefore, HIYA wins. Now, let's talk about price. I will be jointing this a bit with availability, but let's hold off on availability in just a sec. Here's the dilemma here. We're comparing a 2014 figure to a 2024/5 figure. So the prices are definitely going to be a bit different as far as inflation goes. But as far as sheer retail goes, the original NECA Godzilla 2014 release was about $20 to $25. Pretty good. The HIYA was about $51 upon release. So using that as far as 2014 to 2025, that's going to be in NECA's corner, so they win the point. However, there comes availability. That's a whole different ball game, and we're talking strictly July 2025. Actually, yes, 2025. The NECA Godzilla line has been long dead. Yeah, NECA discontinued their Godzilla line after the license expired in, I think, August of 2020. And as a result, they're just not in the Godzilla game anymore. The last figure they actually made was the Tokyo SOS Hyper Major Blast and the Biollante Bio-Attack, Godzilla 1989 from 2020. Even though they are making that little kid in the costume Ben Cooper Godzilla figure, which I kind of want to get, but like I'm not too sold on it. Anyway, back to NECA versus HIYA. That means this guy is at the mercy of the aftermarket. Except, big asterisk, one store that just so happens to sell both of them for retail. And that's going to be Toy Snowman. If you guys don't know what Toy Snowman is, they're basically a Canadian collectible online shop, which I think both Americans and Canadians use. I've never ordered from them personally, but I know about them. That said, out of nowhere, they have like this whole line of NECA Godzilla restock from the 2014 figure, which my guess is that maybe in the warehouse they just somehow found like this box of sealed, unopened NECA Godzilla, the 2014s, and then they just sold them off. So like that's maybe my guess. I don't know. That said, what we do have here is that the 2014 that they currently have listed for order, like you can order it right now. I'm recording this on July 4th, 2025. It's not going to come out day and day with it. So if it goes out of stock, I'm sorry about that. But as of this recording, it is in stock. But currently it goes for $69.99 Canadian, which translated to USD, United States dollar, it is going to come to $51.42. So that's pretty good. What about the HIYA? Well, on that site as well, which they do have it listed, they have it for $74.99 Canadian, which translates to $55.09 USD. So there is that to point out. But roughly speaking, that is going to be about it as far as the availability is concerned. But essentially speaking, you can get them both from the same retailer, but effectively you can get this guy at more retailers because he's more hot and ready and fresh. So HIYA is gonna win this one pretty much at like a bare minimum. And as far as the actual packaging goes, I'm gonna be doing a much more like in-depth video on the box eventually. But essentially for the HIYA, it came in this big, let's see if I can fit this. No, I cannot fit this in the frame. Again, I'm just gonna briefly show you. Big Godzilla 2014 style box, all highlighted in blue, oddly enough, not red. But essentially it is closed box, and I do like the idea of that, but I definitely think that's a bit disappointing how it's not clear plastic, like you don't see the figure, because what if there's like a paint mistake and you want to get another one? But then again, if you're ordering it online, I guess that defeats the whole purpose. Anyway, the NECA Godzilla had like a clamshell box, specifically this version, and then this version came in the poster style packaging, which had like a closed box, the 5-panel. If you know anything about the NECA Godzilla line, you can actually go to my box showcase playlist and look up the NECA Godzillas, you'll see them. It was similar to that, except it was the 2014 variant. That said, I think personally, this is going to come as a subjective thing. I do prefer the poster box variant to the HIYA's box, but I also just prefer both to the clamshell. I mean, at least with the clamshell, you can see the figure, but at that point, it becomes more subjective. So we're going to actually call that, I'm going to give the point to the NECA poster box variant because it's a lot smaller and you can actually see what you're getting. So there is that for convenience. And we have reached the end of the fight, which, to tally up the score, skeleton paint went to HIYA, articulation went to the HIYA, size went to a tie, accessories went to the HIYA, price went to the NECA, availability went to the HIYA by a smidge, and box went to the NECA poster box variant specifically, with a score of 5-3, the HIYA wins. Now, I'm going to be honest. Do I think it deserves the win? In all honesty, yes. I'm going to say it. I think that as far as figure to figure goes, the HIYA is the better figure overall. Listen, I always will have a soft spot for NECA. I always will. I love NECA to death. I love NECA and what they've done with Godzilla. And I'll always will. It's the first ever Godzilla figure line that got me into collecting. But that said, if this is the route HIYA is taking, NECA, if you're gonna come back, you gotta come in swinging. Okay, you gotta update every sculpt. Maybe not every sculpt, but you gotta do something, man. But HIYA, it definitely clears this. As a modern 2025, I guess, collector taking a look at his figures, the 2014 HIYA is definitely the one to get if you're looking for either one. But then again, the NECA is still cheaper than the HIYA on Toy Snowman. Links to both will be in the description. Anyways, if you're wondering why the Playmates 2014 wasn't in this video, because I was initially going to consider him, I decided against it because he's a toy. These ones are more action figure collectibles for older adults. So yeah, there is that. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone.